Hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name's Betty, and today I'm joined by Lily. And Lily is a podcast host. Her podcast is called Lily May Presents, and we'll have information on how you can connect with Lily in the liner notes of this episode. I'm really grateful for your willingness to come on and talk about all things spiritual and your faith journey and transformation and deconstruction. We chatted a little bit before we pressed record. So I'm really excited to introduce you to our community at IANDS, and I'm going to toss it right over to you.
Yeah, I'm so thankful to be here. It's a great opportunity.
All right, go ahead and you can just get into whatever you'd feel called to share with us.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to talk about my deconstruction from Christianity. Yeah, and I want to give a little bit of context before I dive in, because there are many different sects of Christianity. And I believe that original Christianity was a type of mysticism, and social and cultural influences have changed the interpretations of Christianity involving many different sects. So the sect that I grew up in was evangelical Christianity, and my childhood was very Christian. I grew up in the South in Mississippi, and I love Mississippi. I have no hatred or animosity towards Mississippi. But with that said, it's the deep South in the Bible Belt. So, of course, I was taught about Christianity and Jesus growing up. And it was never forced on me. Actually, I dove head into Christianity when I was about a preteen to my teen years, and it was done all myself. I went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. I volunteered. I was very involved in the community that I was in. I loved getting the opportunity to give messages about Bible verses. And to put into context how strong of a Christian I was, I'll paint you a little picture. So I would write Bible verses on index cards and place them all throughout my room, on my nightstand, on my headboard, on my door. And so whenever I would walk out of my bedroom, I would read a Bible verse and remember one a week, and really ruminate on a Bible verse a week. So it was something that really became attached to my identity. I was a Christian. I was a child of God. I was a follower of Jesus. These were all the titles that were going through my head. So it was a huge part of my life, even so to the point that when I began to start college, I knew that I wanted to be a youth pastor after college. So I went into college with that in the back of my head, and I would go to communication classes to try to get my public speaking skills up. But that was really the goal, was to be a youth pastor and follow my passion for Christianity and for Jesus. So it was a huge part of my life. But so if it was such a huge part of my life, then how did I begin to deconstruct from Christianity? Because Lily 3-4 years ago would feel very disheartened and sad to hear that she's no longer a Christian, because it was never in my plan to not be a Christian. That was never even a question in my mind that I would someday not be. But it started when I moved to Spain. And I'm not saying you have to move to a different country to deconstruct from whatever belief system you are in, but I'm saying that it personally helped me, because it helped me get out of the bubble that I was in and even become aware of the fact that I was in a bubble in itself. Because usually when you're so close to a situation, when you're in something, you don't have the perspective that there's something different than that. I had only met Christians. I didn't have deep conversations with people who weren't Christians and who didn't believe what I believed. So it was a shock, to say the least, when I moved to Spain and I started a different university, and I was meeting people who grew up with different religions. And, even scarier, some didn't even have any religion at all. But so I got to know these people on a deeper level than I had ever done with anybody who didn't believe something that I believed. and asking them questions. And I I got to know them that they are actually genuinely good people. They have good morals. They want to follow the same system that I have, that, to love one another, to love yourself, to just be a good human, you know? And but I had grown up telling myself that I was only a good person because I was a Christian. Because I was Christian and because I followed Jesus, I had these morals. And that is where my innate goodness stemmed from, was Christianity. But I was coming face to face with people who weren't Christians and who didn't grow up the same way that I did, who grew up in different cultures with different beliefs, and yet they were still good. So if they are good and I am good, where does goodness itself come from? If they don't have Jesus and Christianity, then their good isn't coming from Jesus or Christianity. So where's mine coming from? And that is when I kind of came to the conclusion that I am innately good in myself. My soul is good. But another question came to mind with that follows that. And I grew up learning about heaven and hell, as most Christians do. And you can only get to heaven, of course, if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God and he came down to this earth to pay the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. He died on the cross and rose 3 days later. If you don't believe in that, then there's this place called hell, and it's an eternal place of torture. And you're going there if you don't believe that. So I had to face the thought in my head that, oh no, these beautiful people that I'm meeting, that I'm getting to know on a deep level, they're going to hell. They're going to a place of eternal torture. And that led me to the conclusion, and it was a very hard conclusion to come to, because whenever you have a belief system that is so tied to your identity and your worldview, when you question it, it comes crashing down. And that's very scary. It's scary to question your beliefs. So in that moment, whenever I was, questioning if they were going to hell or not, I realized that if God is a loving God, which I believe God is a loving God, that he, she, it, I think it's androgynous, that God would send people to an eternity of torture if they don't believe in something. Yet, why do we have the concept of free will? That doesn't sound like free will to me. So I don't believe in a loving God that would do that. And I came to the conclusion that there's something more. I'm missing something. I wasn't taught something here, and there is something more than this. So leaving my community, my bubble, in combination with asking myself these questions that I'd never really had to ask myself before, ultimately led to my deconstruction from Christianity.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting conversation, and I think that we can go a lot of places with it. So what was your experience like with your family after you kind of stepped away from, this life that you were raised in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm still going through that process, and it's a little sad, actually. My siblings, I think they're on the same page as I am, but I haven't really had that conversation with them. And my dad is also on the same page as I am, but the real kicker is my mom, because she is a very strong Christian. And so it hurts her that her child has, been led astray from the faith. And it deeply saddens her. And she actually said, and she told me I would be allowed to say this, she said that it was the saddest news that she's heard in her entire life, that I wasn't a Christian anymore. So that's ongoing, but we have a great relationship. It's just, a cornerstone in her identity. So the fact that her child isn't a part of that, something so big to her and something so close to her heart, is very sad.
Thanks for sharing that, because that's obviously very personal, very vulnerable, and I appreciate that. I think that there's a lot of people who have a lot of fear around stepping away from what it is that they've known their whole lives. So
Yeah.
I heard you say that some of the tools that you used were that you actually physically went away, like a geographical location was something that really helped you open your mind. How do you continue to remain open-minded? What are some of the tools that you use?
Oh, that's such a good question as well. Yeah, I love this because this is something that I do every time I hear something that I don't want to hear. Every time I hear something that scares me a little bit because it doesn't match with the conclusions that I have going on in my own head, is I say to myself that it's okay, that I believe everything ends in love. Everything was made of love and everything goes back to love. So, no matter how scary it seems or sounds to me or how different it is, it all goes back to love. And so that is how I am able to address perspectives and worldviews that may seem a little bit out of my comfort zone in that moment. Uh, but I want to say this, that for anyone who is questioning their belief system or religion, whatever it may be, whether it's Christianity or not, that it's hard to question that. And you go through a sort of grieving process. I went through a grieving process, and it wasn't something that took, a month or something. It took about a year for me to fully deconstruct, and that was being away from the community that I had grown up in. So I can't imagine staying within that community, how hard that is, if it was hard for me when I was outside of it. So I want to say to the people who are having a hard time and it's scary for them to question these deep foundational questions that they kind of ruin your worldview, to be honest. They just break it down. That don't feel ashamed or don't feel guilty, don't feel like you're sinning because you're questioning your own beliefs, to actually lean into it. And my rule of thumb is whatever feels most like peace and most like love, follow it. And so that is what I do continually.
I really love that. Yes. I feel like the people who are subscribers to this YouTube channel or who are listening to this podcast on another platform, typically they already have a bit of an open mind because they're interested in near-death experiences, which is kind of fringe, kind of off the beaten path. But
Yeah.
I will say that that's one of the spiritual downloads that I received too, is that if it's aligned with spiritual virtues, it's probably for the highest good for all. But if it's something that instills fear, or even if you feel a sense of urgency, if you feel like this
Mhm.
has to happen right now, immediately, even that, I had to realize that that's not necessarily spirit.
Mhm.
Spirit's in no rush. Spirit is very patient and tolerant. So I really love that. Because you see on a lot of other channels that people do watch these near death experiences, and the Christian people are generally the ones who have the most to say about these experiences. So I'm curious if you can share a little bit about what got you interested in all of this subject matter.
Yeah, so the subject matter of near-death experiences or religion.
Any sort of mystical, sort of out of the box, out of the
Mm.
religious box.
Yeah, so that is because I opened my mind and deconstructed from Christianity. So once I did that, it was honestly like my world opened up. I was allowed to ask any question that I wanted, even if it seemed crazy to me then. And so I would watch these videos on YouTube. Near death experiences were the main ones that I watched. And I loved hearing about people's experiences with the afterlife. And also, it just made me dive into anything esoteric. I'm really into vibrations and frequency, sound healing, all of it. And my interest began because I opened my mind up outside of the box of Christianity.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So let's dive into that a little bit. What are I feel like we all kind of have these wonderful spiritual puzzle pieces to share with each other. So I love that you're talking about frequency, vibration, sound healing. What's some of the information that you've come upon that maybe you can share with our audience or about those things?
Yeah, well, that everything is energy. Everything. This computer that I'm talking to you from is made from energy because atoms, the smallest unit, is made from protons, neutrons, and electrons. And if you look even deeper, what is in between those particles? What are those particles made out of? That is energy. So if everything is energy, therefore everything has a vibration. Everything is oscillating like this. Everything is moving. And that's what creates density as well. So that's how, I can hit my arm and not go through my arm right now. Yes. So with that, what's also cool is that our emotions have a vibration or frequency as well. And so that goes into love. And love is the highest vibration, the highest frequency. And like hate or fear, they go down the frequencies. So my rule of thumb is I just follow, like I said, I follow what feels most like love and what feels most like peace. And when I do that, I know that I am raising my vibration. I'm raising my frequency by doing that. And once I do that, then I'm able to connect more with spirit. I'm able to connect more with higher vibrational beings. So that is what I do.
I love the way that you just put that. Thank you. So let me play like a little bit of a dual advocate here, not because I believe in anything that I'm about to ask, but just for the sake of
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah. Go ahead.
So I love everything that you're saying. I love you talking about being minded, to not feel guilt or shame if you decide to start thinking out of the box that you were placed in as a child and all of these things, right? So let's say that somebody is really going through something that they perceive they're suffering with, like something like they don't have their necessities met, like they don't have housing, they don't have food, they don't have money, right? How does dialing into the frequency of love work for somebody who is really perceiving that they're suffering in their human experience?
That's another great question. And I believe my view is that whatever situation you're going through, and there are some really terrible situations, to see that situation not from a place of victimhood or that it's happening to you, but you can see it as that it's happening for you and that you're growing from it. You're not a victim to it. And I've also heard the perspective, I haven't had near-death experience, but people who have had near-death experiences, I've learned from them that souls sometimes actually choose the experiences that they go through. So they can choose a really arduous experience that in our human mind, we can't conceptualize. Why in the world would they choose to go through that? Well, it's to grow, to get a higher vibration, to evolve their soul. And so if you look at those situations with that mindset, you can actually be thankful for them and step away from the victim mindset. And that just goes back to what I was saying before about vibration and feeling sorry for yourself, feeling bitter. Those are lower vibrational things. So always follow love.
Love that. Yes. Self-pity is definitely its own frequency as well. Victimhood is a frequency as well. I really love what you just shared. And I love, that you're taking pieces of knowledge from other people's experiences. Again, exercising that spiritual virtue of open-mindedness. That's what it's all about. So I want to ask about, do you have a relationship with Jesus today or Yeshua? Do you see that entity as something different? What's your faith kind of like today?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So I believe that Jesus was a real person. I just don't see Jesus in the context of the Christianity that I grew up in. And again, there are many different sects. Different Christians see Jesus in different ways. But how I grew up seeing Jesus was that he was the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. And in order to believe, and when you believe in him, you go to heaven. And you believe that he died for our sins and was the Son of God. So I believe Jesus, or Yeshua, was an actual person, and that he was just a messenger, and he had a really high frequency for that period of time in history where he was. And I believe that he wasn't telling people to follow him necessarily, but he was giving them the tools to do it themselves. He was putting the power in the people's hands. He was not taking the power away from them and saying, look at me. He was actually being, I'm going to give you the skills to do what I do. You're going to heal. You're going to be able to perform miracles. So that is how I view Jesus. And today I do have a relationship with him. I think he's more like an avatar, like Buddha was. And yeah, he has a very compassionate energy to him.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that that's an important thing to talk about, that the conception of this higher entity can transform. It's like you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So just because the idea of the Christian faith, this organized faith that you came from, doesn't necessarily mean that everything is bad. So
Absolutely.
let
Yeah.
me ask about, oh, go ahead.
I'd also like to say that my relationship with Christianity and the community that I grew up in was beautiful. It was very healthy. I wasn't wronged in any way. No harm came to me, which I know that does happen in many Christian communities and religions in general. But I just want to specify that that didn't happen for me. So my deconstruction from Christianity didn't come from a place of pain, of hurt, or abuse, or rebellion in any sense. It just came from my own logical deductions.
I love that. Yeah, heart opening. That's the way that I see it anyway. Just really a door opening inside the mind or the heart and just being ready for more. So, who are some of the spiritual teachers that really resonate with you today now that you've kind of been blasted open?
I'm still figuring that out. Yeah.
That's great. I love that. For me, that journey was one of the most exciting. Being able to listen to different people talk and figure out what I liked out of each of it, and even all the different religions too. Did you ever find yourself going into different faiths to explore that?
Yeah, right now I'm studying a bit of Taoism, and I'm not so deep into it, but that is what I'm studying. But I don't think that I will ever call myself a part of any specific organized religion, but I do like the idea of studying them and going in and like researching, okay, well, why did they think this about that? And then taking little truths here and there and what resonates with me. So right now I'm doing that with Taoism.
Very cool. Yeah, a friend and I are also studying Taoism right now as well. So that's a cool synchronicity for me. Thanks for sharing about that. So let's talk a little bit more about your podcast. What was the inspiration? What do you talk about on it? Give us all the details.
Thank you. Yeah. So the inspiration came from this. It came from my heart opening, as you say. It came from my mind opening, and I realized that, whoa, I am a really curious person. I'm interested in many different things, not just spiritual things, but also like knowledge-based things. But then I realized that they're all connected, it's all connected to spirituality in the end. So, yeah, my deconstruction from Christianity really opened my mind up to be able to allow myself to explore things and topics and questions that I had never explored before, because Christianity, I feel, really put me in a box. I had all the answers in the Bible or in what the church said or what my pastor said. I had the answer to this, to this, to this. And also, there are some topics that some Christians can be turned off by and scared of. And I was one of those. So I didn't like doing yoga. I would hear the word meditation and would immediately close my ears. Not listening to that. That's the devil. That's evil. Um, so and also, if I would have heard someone talk about frequency and vibration back then, I believe I would have thought that that was evil as well, and sound healing. So I think topics that used to scare me, that used to turn me away, suddenly didn't anymore whenever my worldview opened up and I was open to different things. So that is where my podcast stemmed from. And I also, connected very much to near death experiences throughout my deconstruction. So that was one thing that I really wanted to talk about, was talking to people about their near death experiences, because those really helped me in my deconstruction process and in my opening up of my own world.
Thanks for sharing that. So, what's one of the greatest messages that you've taken away from, diving into all of these near-death experiences?
Yeah, there are many. There are many, but I think the greatest one was from Crystal Ray. And what she learned during her near death experience was that love is all that matters. And she talks about many, many cool things. But that was her main thing, that love is all that matters. And another thing that resonated with me about her was she talked about vibration, and she got out of her near death. She had a car accident and she plunged off of an 80-foot cliff and she survived. She died and then came back. But whenever she was in the afterlife, she remembers being told or being shown that she has a myriad of realities open to her. And the realities that were vibrationally close to her vibration now was that she comes back to Earth and she writes a book. Or she can come back to Earth and be disabled and have, disabilities and brain damage and all of that. So she came back because she chose the reality in which she was going to write a book. But when she was in the hospital, she had a broken neck. They showed her the x-ray, look, your neck is broken. And what she did at that point was she was like, no, that's not a part of my timeline. And then she raised her vibration. She put her hand on her neck and her neck was healed. They took x-rays again and again. They couldn't believe it. But I really like that she showed that it's just a vibrational shift. It's going more towards love, and love is all that matters. So that is the most poignant thing that I can think of right now.
I love that. And, that's the same kind of miracle that Jesus was doing. You know what I mean? Just like having that unwavering faith and belief that we are co-creators of this dream that we're inside of this reality that we live in. I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Crystal has done some work with IANDS as well. She's done a webinar for our online platform. So yeah, totally amazing. I just want to see if there's anything else that you'd like to share to feel more complete about our time together today.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So I would just say my last words would be, again, and I think there's kind of a theme here that I want to get across, that whatever you're questioning, whatever beliefs or perspectives that you're rummaging through in your brain, and if anything scares you or you feel guilty for having questions about your religion or anything it may be, to just go towards love, go towards peace. Go in that stillness. Go in a place of heart thinking instead of mind thinking. And that's something that I've learned recently, is whenever I find stillness, and that can be through meditation, it can be through reading or walking, or if you're an artist, it can be through creating. But whatever it is, there's stillness there. There's a presence. There's peace. When you're in this moment, when you're here, when you're now, you're in the now, because that's the only moment there is. You find a stillness, and in that stillness, you're able to go into a place of heart thinking. Like you're inside of yourself, and that's like the most beautiful place to be. And you're outside of this outward mind thinking about the world, thinking about what's happening, thinking about what you're scared of, what you're going to do next, thinking about the future, thinking about what you said 10 years ago to that person that you may have hurt their feelings, or whatever it may be. So I would say find presence, and in that presence, you will find stillness. And in stillness, whatever feels most like love and most like peace, go towards it, and you can't go astray.
That is really beautiful. I just thought of one more question that I wanted to ask you. When did this deconstruction start to take place? How many years ago?
3.
Okay, yeah, you speak so well, and you're so enthusiastic about it. So I felt like it had to be something that was relatively new, but I hope
Yeah.
that you never lose that enthusiasm, because I
Oh,
can
thank
hear
you.
your passion, and I can really feel what it is that you're saying. And I totally agree with you 100%. And I'm so grateful for your willingness to come and serve our community at IANDS, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye.